Hump. I had met Steve in the lobby of a building in Long Beach. I was looking around for an apartment. I got directed over there. Something was available. Talked to him. Turns out he's kind of the building manager. And he was looking for a roommate. Okay, fine. He explained to me that the rest of the building was black. Two-story building, used to be a motor vehicles office way back in the day. Long Beach was a pretty hopping place for a long time, you know, a real destination point for a lot of beachgoers. Quite a lot of large buildings along the boardwalk. And it really was a shadow of itself. This area was majority black. A lot of the retired Jews lived along the boardwalk in those buildings. It was a dumping ground for Nassau County, which was all Republican with the exception of Democratic Long Beach. So there was so much old housing there, old apartments from that boom era, that it was an easy place to put a lot of people. So I'm working in a Getty station at the far ends of the island, a little town called Point Lookout, made famous by a couple of Harry Chapin songs. And you know, we decided, okay, this will work out. You know, we'll give it a try for a little while. Not that, you know, like I was, you know, in any position to be arguing. And, you know, I started working out fairly well. You know, within a couple of weeks, we were telling each other, you know, like dreams, aspirations, you know, like what you kind of want to do with your life. And, you know, we're 20 years old. Steve's a butcher. He's, you know, working in a couple of the you know, grocery stores around, you know, chain stores now. There are no real butcher shops. My father was a butcher, a meat salesman back in the 50s. And, you know, it was a fairly decent job back then. So, you know, it was a little we could relate to each other on. He started telling me about his, you know, one of his dreams was, you know, to become a gigolo, start, you know, servicing women. And I explained to him that he'd probably have to start going down on a lot of guys and start things, you know, just to keep the money coming in. I mean, you know, that's, you know, you're a prostitute. You know, I mean, you know, so, you know, like, where's the money coming from? Oh, no, I won't do that. Well, you know, you kind of got to do that. So he wasn't too up on that idea after a little while. But there was something still rumbling around in his head. So he starts working, managing, watching the door, a couple of the local strip clubs. There's a place in Oceanside just across the water that has got one of the sleazier joints, but the local Italians were much preferred that to the black bar that it had been prior to the strip joint. So, you know, so he's working there, and I get a knock on my door late at night. Steve's not there, it's 1 o'clock. I open the door, and it's this young black girl. And she's like, is Steve home? And I'm like, no. And she's like, well, you know, what are you doing? You know, well, you know, anything you want. You know, she was one of the strippers over at this club. And we had a good old time. I wake up the next morning, she's gone, and the bed's wet. It's not water. You know, and see her again a couple of times. Same story every morning. Bed's always wet. I ask her about it, you know, and she tells me that, well, she plays around with my dick at night, and I urinate. You know, and she's still seeing Steve, and, you know, like one of the days I asked me, I said, is she pissing in your bed too? And he looks at me like, really? And she's doing, he believed her. He was a nice guy. There wasn't a mean bone in his body, but he wasn't, the brightest bulb in the bunch. And I had to be very careful, because I can kind of get away with stories if you're too willing to believe me. So I'll just keep on making it more and more inflated to a point where, come on, you gotta start questioning. He didn't question it. This is all, wow, really? And I do that, and I get to him and finally I say, Steve, it was just complete bullshit. You gotta start, thinking about what people are saying to you. Neither here nor there. Yeah. So, but he was very relieved to find out that he wasn't the one urinating in the bed, and we didn't see too much of her after that. A friend of mine from college reconnected with Ricky. I was actually more friends with his roommate, who Ricky treated like absolute garbage. But at the same time, I knew Ricky had real problems with his family growing up, and he was brilliant. And I'm a sucker for brilliant. So, we kept in touch. And, he drops over one time, meets Hump. Well, Steve. Okay, he's still Steve at this point. And, we're talking. And Ricky spent a bunch of years in LaSalle Military Academy prep school. Not the nicest place in the world. And he was pretty good at that, let's destroy somebody's ego, gaming. So Ricky's looking at Steve and going, well, we got to come up with a good nickname for you. And Steve gets all excited, and he's got this big kind of puppy dog, look to him at times. And, he's like, oh, yeah, they used to call me Thumper in high school. And Ricky deliberately mishears him and goes, Humper? Humper? Yeah, I think we can call you Humper. And Steve is just a deer caught in the headlights. He's like, no, Thumper. And Ricky goes, well, you don't like Humper? Well, how about if we just call you Hump? And it stuck. Okay, this is a long time ago. This is over 40 years ago. I don't remember if someone else was in the room. I don't think I knew enough of his friends to have spread that but he ended up with that as a nickname, and he couldn't get rid of it. It just, years later, I'd see him out in the streets, and he'd be wearing a softball jersey from the local league he was playing with, and you see the back of it, it says Sunshine Hump. His team refused to not put Hump on his jersey. So the only concession they made was, for him to say Sunshine Hump. Now, like I say, Steve, not the brightest. And he was still thinking about this, how do I make some money off of this sex trade stuff? God, times have changed. So there was this strip club out in Suffolk County, next county over, called The Castle. And it was a fairly good-looking place, it was, kind of fancy for, certainly the places, that we habited. And they had talent night, Thursday night, Tuesday nights. Anybody could get up, they wanted to, they gave you some time on the stage, you do your thing and you get off. Well, You see, that's the thing. You can't get off. You were allowed total nudity in Suffolk County unless you became obviously physically aroused. So that means the women had to wear pasties, because if their nipples got hard, they'd have to get off the stage. Steve was worried about getting an erection, and he's talking with me about this, and I'm joking around. I said, well, why don't you try the stuff from the old, they used to give to the boys in the old prep schools, get you some saltpeter. And he's, we all heard about it back then, some kind of myth. You get all these, like randy boys in a, boys' school, and what the hell do you do with them? Well, you put some of this stuff in the potatoes, and, they kind of lose the urge, which it's used as a diuretic, veterinary uses, but as a diuretic, but also to relieve heat in animals. You give this thing to it and boom, it's over. So we figure, give it a try. I can get it down at the pharmacy. Well, used to be able to. You probably can't now. God, it's one of the components of gunpowder. So that's how I know about it. So I'm gonna get some of this stuff, and it's got the diuretic equivalents for a cow. We took the weight of a cow, took Steve's weight, did it proportionally. Tried it a couple of days in a video just to see if it would work. He got sick as a dog. But he couldn't get it up for days. There was nothing there. Think George Costanza and shrinkage, but it allowed him to get up on the stage. I can wave his thing, So, boy, that was a tough night. So, that's, the final little story. He, like I said, was a butcher. He liked to sample the raw meats, including the raw pork. Everybody knows you don't eat raw pork. He knew you don't eat raw pork. He comes over to me one day and he says, look, I usually go to a doctor for this, but could you do me a favor and cut these things out, because I have these cysts behind my ears? I look at him and go, what? And he goes, yeah, it's no big deal. You just, you slice them open, you pull the goop out, and you put some bandages on it. Okay, yeah, we both have a couple of drinks. We got all this stuff laid out. He turns around, and it's not just a couple. There's more than a dozen, spread between. There's some that are as big as a nickel. It's just ugly, And, well, what the hell, he's slicing it, pack up behind his ears, you get all this goop out. He's already had this done once, and he's still eating raw pork? You can understand, at that point, I absolutely understood why the Muslims and the Jews banned pork from the diet. So how do you tell people? Graphic images, we got all that stuff in school. It doesn't. So I ended up coming home from a weekend with a girlfriend. We were upstate, had a nice time. Get back, cop cars, ambulances. What's going on? Well, some guy upstairs was all pissed off at his girlfriend working in the whorehouse down the hallway, and he took a shotgun to her. So that was it. Time to find a new place to live.